Good afternoon. Another NookChat. We don't know what number it is because some of us old timers don't remember as well as we used to. But anyhow, we have about 19 of them in the can now. But today we're going to hear from Harvey. He's a local Nooksack person, and he came before a lot of you were around, but a lot of us have been here too. So he comes from a family that immigrated from Minnesota, like the Bergs did, and we part of the Western migration. He was a little bit later than some of the rest, but he was. He has run the shop that his dad started down in Nooksack, and has been a fixture in Nooksack now for over half a century. So without further ado, I'm going to let Harvey start, and hopefully he'll tell us where he came from and all that sort of thing, so we'll know how he got here and a little bit about his family and what they did. So without further ado, here you are, Harvey Smith.
Yeah, my folks moved here from Minnesota in the 30s, and
Can you hear him back there? How's the mic coming through? Can you hear him?
a little bit louder. Anyway, my grandfather married a woman from Everett, and that's why my folks came here from Minnesota back in the 30s. And my oldest sister was born in Minnesota, and when she came here, I don't know how old she was, but she couldn't have been too old, and like 5 maybe. And my grandmother came from Everett, and then my dad and mom came out here from Minnesota and to visit them, and they stayed. And I was born in Linden, and actually St. Luke's. And then I was born in Linden, and my dad worked for Pete off on the River Road, and then he worked for Holly's, and we moved off from the Holly's when I was 2 years old, and we moved to South Pass Road to a farm on LeBrant Road. And my dad worked there on the farm from 40 to 45, and he worked for Carl Gretsch across the tracks, we called it across the tracks because there was tracks there then.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and Carl Gretsch did all the county and truck and grader and cat repair and such, and that's my dad worked for him for 5 years, and then he quit the farm and moved to Nooksack and bought the shop in Nooksack, and then he retired there, and I kept working there after I got out of the Army in '59, and I worked with my dad for all that time, except for 5 years I worked for Great Western, helped them build that last mill up there. I cut iron up, and I cut truckloads and truckloads of iron up by the blueprint, and then I labeled everything so that they just went out with a forklift and picked up the load of iron and brought it back to put it together, and it was all labeled so they knew where it was supposed to go after I cut it up. And I worked there from 71 to 76, and then I went back to work for my dad. And him and I were kind of a partnership, and we worked in the shop until he retired, I think, in '84. And then I worked there until I retired, and I don't know when that was. I don't know. And anyway, I lived around Nooksack. There was 318 people lived in Nooksack, and I knew them all. And then I moved to Everson in '64. I moved to Everson in '64. I bought a house on Reed's Lane, and I lived in Everson all my life since then until I moved out in on the Everson Goshen Road 30-some years ago, and that's where I live now.
Whereabouts?
Just before the auction barn, there's on the other side of Sable Terrace,
Okay.
and there's a road that runs back in there. There's 6 property owners on that road, and we have our own well, and that's where we live. Anyway, don't do much of anything now.
One of the things that Harvey's family illustrates so clearly is that his first grandmother died in childbirth, and they moved, but they were subsistence farmers like so many of us were. But his dad acquired the skills to fabricate equipment. And tell them about some of the equipment that your dad learned how to fabricate.
Well, he worked at the mill. He worked at the mill and Great Western. It was called Everson Hardwood then, and he built. Of course, he copied the machine. He built an edger and built lots of cutoff saws and stuff for them and for Walt Craig and George Lowe's. And then when they sold it to Millman's, they bought a mill in Oregon, Powers, Oregon, and so my dad loaded all his stuff up on their truck, and they had a flatbed lumber truck and a Dodge tractor that towed it over there, and he worked over there for a year or two working for them. So my mom went over there for a while, and then I stayed with a couple by Sumas because I hayed for them. I think I was 16, and I stayed with them and helped them hay. They had 100 acres of hay on Northwest Road, and we went over there and we cut hay. And the baler we had was an old wire tie baler, and that thing was the most dustiest thing I ever worked on, rode on.
Yep.
And anyway, I was supposed to drive tractor, but his dad drove the tractor, and I had to sit on one side of that baler, poking them wires through and tying them. And so anyway, and then after that, then I went to high school. I stayed with them and helped milk cows and feed cows and stuff and calves, and that was my job for a while. But it was okay. You learn a little.
But your dad fabricated equipment that
Yeah.
they didn't go to the store and buy the equipment.
No, E.W. Leonard. He was a state senator, and he lived out on
Stickney Island.
I think Stickney Island Road, and he grew seed potatoes, and they had a whole bunch of rickety stuff, and so we in the shop, and my dad built a potato digger for him, and got it all built. Had to have rollers made put rubber on them so you wouldn't damage the potatoes, and we built bin pilers and built all their potato boxes and all that stuff. And we had a wrecker then. We used to have to go out in the peat and pull them trucks out of the peat, and some of them get sink in there pretty far. But then we built bin pilers for EW, and then we built a carrot digger last in the shop there, and that thing would dig. It was a 3-row carrot digger, and that thing would dig carrots like you wouldn't believe it. And it got we built it for Herb Cordas and Butch Quam, and that thing dug carrots and just like crazy. And then Dennis Skeffer ended up with it, and then Kevin Skeffer, Dennis's son, ended up with it, and then they quit growing carrots around here. All the carrots was grown in eastern Washington after that. But we used to work for Riverberry. I worked for Riverberry a lot. When Corps van built all them first diggers. The driver sat on the fender and down low, and they Herb Cordice and Butch Quam, they bought 2 or 3 of them, and we changed them and bought parts and pieces from Corps van, and then I put the driver up on top so they could see the rows better, and worked on them. And the first berry picker I bought or worked on was a guy bought a berry picker out of California, and it was a bean picker. I don't know what kind of a bean it was. It's too hard to say anyway. But it didn't work properly for raspberries, so I helped rebuild that thing and changed it all. But anyway, we got that thing going, and he had his own berries, and that was the first one I worked on.
And what kind of formal training did you have to know all this stuff?
Oh, I just learned it in the shop when I worked with my dad.
And what kind of formal training did your dad have?
Milking cows, I think, was his formal training.
Wow. So you're saying these were original designs of your father? He designed and built them?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah, that caretaker. Of course, you had a lot of people was kind of walking by and saying that you could do this or do that or something, but yeah, it was pretty much his own design.
Yes, that's why they call it metal fabrication.
Yeah.
And
Did
he
do
designed.
anything with the potato harvesters?
Pardon?
Did he do anything with the potato harvesters?
Actually, the potato harvester, part of it was copied,
Okay.
and it was made by Champion. And Champion came over here and were going to sue my dad, but DNC was working for the senator. The senator knew the laws and said, "Hey, he works for me, and he can build anything. I can build anything I want as long as I don't sell it." So that took care of that one.
So, and your dad also built equipment for the mill when they made the mill.
When Walt Craig and George Lowe's owned that mill, there was a little mill sitting alongside of it, and then they built a new one at that time, which was built back in, I don't know, 55, 56. I can't remember exactly. I was probably too small to remember. But anyway, they designed and built everything in that mill just about, and some of the stuff was copied, but like all the swing saws and all that was just built. And then when Millman's bought the mill, then they built a new one, and then that was all bought and stuff. And I worked there mostly, helped build the frames and all that, cut all the iron to fit and whatever. And then I stayed there after that as maintenance for 5 years. I worked there.
You were the primary equipment fabricating business around.
There were several guys working there and everything. It wasn't all just me. It was them too. And some of them guys had good ideas, and some of them were bad ideas. But a lot of them were just we worked them just as until they found out something better or whatever.
But
I
Smith's
wouldn't
way
let you
built.
put a seat on the potato harvesters because we stood 12 hours on those potato harvesters and sorting.
Oh, sure.
Standing. By the time you get off of it, you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to have some kind of a little stool or something if there was a way to put that onto it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it.
You were telling me that your dad fabricated or created trucks and truck beds. And
Well, yeah. We built a lot of spud boxes and truck beds and stuff in the shop, and put decks on hay trailers and I don't know what all. Anyway, I drove hay truck for 1 year for Marina Starkenberg. He had a big gas truck. It had a Buick motor in it when it came from the factory. And my dad took it out and put a Chevrolet motor in it because it was a Chevrolet. And the Buick motor, I guess, wasn't doing too good anymore. But I drove it one summer. I hauled hay from Eastern Washington. Marinas had his own hay over there with Merlin Elmore, and it was on the other side of the Columbia River. And I can't remember the name of it. There was a little town on the other side there, but I can't remember the name of that
George?
town.
Where-
No, it was like Royal Slope, I think was the name of that town. Wasn't much of a town. It was pretty small. But it was on the other side of the Columbia River, and then there was no freeway then. You had to go up and down the old road through Ellensburg and Clallam, and then you go through Vantage, which was an 11-mile hill there to get on top of the hill from the river. And the bridge was really narrow going over the river, and I was going over, and a Greyhound bus was coming back, and he hit my mirror. I got over until my tires were rubbing the curb, and his mirror took my mirror off. Anyway, we got it all loaded up and everything. I got back to, I think it was Ellensburg. We used to stop and get gas there all the time, and I got a mirror there to put on there so I'd be able to see down the road behind me where I've been. Yeah.
You didn't have any rear view mirror, and
No, we had mirrors on the truck, and they stuck out pretty good to see by the hay, and yeah.
Those potato diggers, were those the old level bed potato diggers?
Well, I don't know what you mean by level bed. Actually.
Well, they dug the potatoes up and came back on a chain, so the dirt and stuff would fall through, and then dumped them back on the ground.
No, they didn't dump on the ground.
Oh, okay, that's what the old
it.
level beds were.
I worked behind that one time. They had a little digger, and they weren't very big. They only stood off the ground about 18, 20 inches, and they just dug them and went on chain, and the chain, they had shakers, and they were like star, and the chain bounced up and down, and then all the dirt was off, and that dumped them on the ground. And then you walked behind that and had a belt with a bunch of sacks hanging on the back of you, and then you picked potatoes. That's the way it was when I worked behind them.
I remember that.
Yeah, but no, these diggers, they dug them up. They had chain all the way to the top, and then they sat on a bed. I don't know how that really was anymore, because they went on a back, and they went into something they can't drop unless they got a cushion.
Yep.
And then they went in a side conveyor that dumped them into trucks. But I can't quite remember how that all was too. I helped worked on that darn thing too, and I don't remember.
Well, somehow or other there was like walkways, and we were standing on the bed sorting through the potatoes as they went by. And we were standing there, and the girl did it.
Yeah, they had a deal on the side where you could stand and you pick sticks and rocks and clots of dirt out and
fat potatoes.
Yeah. But I don't exactly remember. I remember how the potato diggers worked. We designed a new. They had chain that ran them, and the chain was on the front end, and it ran in oil, and it had a cover on it, and that box where the oil was in was every time you had to work on it, you were a mess. And anyway, we did a deal where we worked it on the back, and every other roller, one roller drove the other roller, and we made a machine to put the spiros on, and the spiros, the long one drove a short one, and the long one went way on back where the carrots would drop in a bin, and then they conveyed them out, and it was driven across the back on the long one. So the short one, it was a long one, two short ones, another long one, and then two more short ones, and the long ones drove the short ones, and then that way they were in the back, and then they didn't have to run in oil anymore. They just ran on the outside of the digger, way in the back. And you had a little guard there to guard the chain so you wouldn't get your fingers in it. And then the tub that this in had a chain that went back and forth in it, but it had a metal bottom in it, so the potatoes didn't fall on the chain, they fell on the metal. And then when you took it out, you gradually pulled that out, then the conveyor took it up to the truck.
Do you remember whenever they had a potato digger buried down there by the grade school? It sat there for months.
Which grade school is this?
Yeah, down here, right by the highway. I remember they had a big. They must have had a big tractor on it, 4-wheel.
Oh yeah.
And he got it buried in there. He was way down below his axles,
Oh my.
and
Yeah.
it was raining, so there's no way they get anything in there to pull it out. So they let it sit there for months.
Yeah, Riverberry, they had pea harvesters, and we had that big wrecker, and we'd go over there and tip them back up again. I've picked up several of them, but the trouble with it is, they're kind of clumsy. There's no place to hook onto them, and they had big Chrysler motors in them pea harvesters, and I picked up several of them, but they had young guys driving them, and they would tip them over on the roads, corners and stuff. But we used to go out to Holly's too. I went out to Holly's a few times and picked up harvesters that they tipped over or something, but they were pea harvesters. Yeah.
But you weren't in wet or rainy ground or anything like that where you could
No, they just quite often they were just off of the edge of the
Highway.
road. They'd tip them over on the roads, and you get over too far and you sat way up high, and yeah. But they had self leveling devices on them, and then they got stuck, and the device kept pushing the tires deeper into the mud, into the ground. And then we'd have to go over there and shut the device off, and then we'd take that big wrecker and pull the tires out of the mud, and you could raise them hydraulically if you shut the device off, and then we'd chain them up so they wouldn't go down. Then we'd lift the whole harvester up and put boards and everything in and fill the hole up under them. Otherwise, they just keep shoving them in the ground. That leveling device. And
How did you learn all that without going to school?
I think I learned a lot from my dad. I don't know, just doing it.
On the job.
Just doing it.
On the job training.
Yeah.
Didn't leave school with any college debt either, did you?
No.
No. But you
I
can go
just-
to work anywhere.
I just read an article online and it says if you can't afford college, don't go.
There you go.
That's the way we used to do it when I was a
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah, that's right.
But nowadays they go to college and build up a big debt
Oh, yeah.
because they think they have to learn all this in school. But here's a perfect example of somebody who got along very well for generations just on their own knowledge and learning it as they went.
Well, when you grow up on a farm after the Depression, you learn to do a lot of things because you couldn't afford to
Yeah.
have things fixed. You learn to do a lot.
Yeah, you're just doing.
Yeah.
You learn how to fix things, There's not too many things I can't fix.
I love to hear these stories. When I was in high school, I worked for my uncle who had a wheat farm in eastern Montana.
Mhm.
And it was middle of the summer, and he knew he was going to need a combine for harvest. But he didn't go buy a new one. He went to the dealer and he bought 3 used ones of the same model, drug them back to the farm, and we made one good one. That's how I learned and I learned how to work.
We did not have a disposal society in those days.
No,
No,
Yeah, you didn't throw things away because you might need them,
you fixed them.
fix them.
Yep.
I know Dwayne Dunlap said that his dad could take anything apart, figure out what was broken, put it back together, and fabricate that part and put it back together and make it work.
Yep.
We don't teach people that these days.
I knew
So-
Dwayne's dad. He was
So-
my neighbor.
Tell us about NookSack when you were there in the 40s. It was a big bustling town, was it?
No, it was already on.
I-
It was all. It was already on its way down. Now, I remember like Roy Dennison built his body shop in Nooksack where the a hotel used to be. And when he was digging the forms to put the foundation in for his shop, he ran across this great big cement thing, which was a septic tank to that hotel. So it was on the corner of the foundation, so he just finished it off and made a bathroom in that corner and put the toilet right on top of the septic tank. All he had to dig was a new drain field. But then across the street to the north of Roy's was the police station, and I knew them people that lived in that. And it was a house, but it was actually a police station. And they later on, that was a border patrol used it for an office, and then there was a big shop in the middle next door to that, and then there was the post office, and the first post office was the post office when I was there. And next to that was Spud Hannawell's house, which was, I think, a bank. No, the bank was next door to that, his house. And that was Spud Hannawell's shop where he kept all his tools and stuff in his electrical business. And when Dunlap ended up buying that, and we fixed the door. He got a door somewhere and put it back on the bank, on the safe, and so it all fixed up pretty nice. And then they made a gunsmith out of that, a gun shop out of that.
They were still using that post office when you moved there.
Oh yeah,
That was before Roberts built his new one.
Yeah, that was Lloyd Pike, I think was his name that had that.
Right.
And then there was a foundation, and I don't know what was in that foundation, but next to that was a Mather building, and between Spud Hannawell's bank building, the original bank, and the Mather building was the Nooksack water tank on tower, and it was next to the alley, and I can remember when I was a kid, I helped chop it down. And that's when they got water from Sumas.
You hoped it wasn't being used as water tank when you chopped it down with it.
No, not anymore. But I remember helping chop it down.
Was Spud Hannawell Percy Hannawell's dad?
No.
Oh, that's a different.
Different Hannawell.
Okay.
Yeah, Percy, he lived out on Highway 9.
Did they have motor in?
No. No, that was Percy Lunger.
Oh, okay.
That was Percy Lunger, and then he sold it to,
Johnson.
no, he sold it to Russell Martin.
Martin, yeah.
We called him Curly, I don't know, but to me he was Curly Martin. And he helped Percy Lunger in the store all the time and everything, and then he bought it, and then Johnson bought it, and then I can't remember who all bought it. And then when I got out of the Army, before I went in the Army, there was Stanley Upper owned it. And then he still had it when I got out, and then he moved up Highway 9 on the other side of Prairie, and there was a little short road, well actually a long road, but it went under the railroad tracks, and instead of going under the tracks, you turned left, and he had a farm back there, and we used to go out there.
Do you know the history of the Mercantile building in Nooksack?
Pardon?
The history of the Mercantile building in Nooksack on the corner there?
Yeah.
The Roachdale?
I don't know, I just.
The one that's still there?
It's
Yeah,
still there.
It's still there.
Yeah, I built in 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was first it was the Roachdale. But Barleen used it for storage for a long time.
Used it for junk storage, but it was owned by
Sturman's was the
Sturman,
last.
yes.
Yeah.
And then before that it was, who, I'm not going to say that name, but I didn't really know him. But they was sold, Stanley Upper sold it about, not Stanley Upper,
Barleen.
Before Barleen.
Sturman's.
Sturman sold it several times, but always got it back. And there was a guy from Elmira bought it. He had a hotel, motel in Elmira, and I don't know, he sold a hotel and he bought Sturman's, but Sturman's always seemed to get it back, and I don't know why. But
well, for a while when Sturman's had it, it was like a cold freeze, right? Because we used to store food over there.
Yeah, cold storage lockers
they had
in
a
there.
feed store in the back, and then on the side of that was cold storage, and then he had a regular store there.
Yep.
'Cause
Then he added to the north side of it,
okay.
and that was all full of stuff. I don't know what it was. There was all kinds of stuff in there.
Because it still says up above it, it still says mercantile.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, I used to stand in front of that and catch the bus for school. I'd walk down there from home. Yeah. And then Barleen got it, and it's all full of bins and stuff, just stuff. I don't know, pieces of this.
And then he sold it, and the couple made a store in there and got all the stuff out of there.
Yeah, it's.
What did he do with all that stuff?
I don't know. I can't remember who owned it last. I knew him at the time, but I don't. The one of them guys that owned that store ended up being a cop in Blaine. He was I think the sheriff or something in Blaine.
There was a beekeeper had a shop in there for a while. I can't remember his name, but he made hive bodies. He had equipment in there and made hive bodies and so on.
Yeah, was it Russell?
Yes. Russell.
I can't say his
I can't
last
think of
name.
last, yeah, but that's,
He
yeah,
married.
a Larson.
Yes, Orville Larson's daughter.
Yes,
Oh,
Barbara.
yeah,
Yeah, he married Orville Larson's daughter, and he built a big bee extracting thing up on Orville's place on the North Pass Road.
yeah.
And then they went to Eastern
They're
Washington.
over there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know what he does over there, but I think he still does bees yet.
Huh.
He came from Wyoming originally, went to school in Nooksack, and then he married Barbara. It was kind of in the horse rodeos type thing.
Yeah.
When
Well, Orville used to break horses.
Yeah, Orville used to have mules, and he used to build trails for the Forest Service. And I ran around a little bit with Orville. I rode my bicycle all the way up to his place, and I'd get way up in that top corner up there, and then I'd ride that bicycle down, and then I realized I couldn't get stopped. I laid her on the side and slid right under the barbed wire fence. I used to go over there and help Orville shovel mule manure. I really enjoyed Orville. Yeah. Yeah, sure did enjoy him.
We had some colorful people.
Oh boy, yeah, Orville was quite he could start on a story and he would just talk for hours, and then he'd come right back to the beginning and finish the story. And I don't know how he did it, but boy, he was good. Yeah, I sure liked Orville. Yeah.
That early mercantile in the 20s, I think, was owned by a guy named Nunemaker.
Yeah, that could be. I have no idea. I can't remember the original owner up there when Stanley Upper bought it, or when Sturman's bought it.
My grandparents came to Nooksack in 22 to work at the mercantile.
Oh yeah.
And Nunemaker was a friend of theirs.
Oh. Huh, I'll be darned.
Didn't Orville Larson marry a Harriman girl from out on the Mission Road?
Orville Larson?
Married a Harriman girl.
No. Let me see. I got to stop and think. Bun Harriman.
Yes,
Bun Harriman was a gunsmith.
Yes.
I bought guns from him.
great gunsmith.
And he was just a little short guy, and they
Yep.
called him Bun.
Yep,
But his son Ron Harriman, he lived up the road from Bun.
Yep.
And they had another boy, a younger one. too,
Clarence.
Yeah.
He was a
Clarence.
classmate of mine.
Yeah.
We were good
I
friends.
haven't seen him around. I don't know.
Well,
if
he
he's-
died a long time ago.
Yeah, I think he died before Ron did.
Yes, he did.
And then Ron, he found a sleigh in the ditch on his walk. And his wife says, "Why don't you take it home?" So he went down to the pickup and loaded it up. It's all in pieces, and he took it home. And then after he died, Roy Dennison painted it. But he came to me, and that originally belonged to Nolte, that sleigh. and the kids stole it out of that garage along the road,
Oh.
and they just destroyed it. And I ended up with them shafts for that sleigh, and Ron Nehrman came to me and he said, I understand you got the shafts to that sleigh. And I said, yeah, they're in the shop here at home. And he says, oh, what do I have to do to talk you out of it? Well, I says, just ask me for them. I'll give them back to you. So I gave them to him, and he rebuilt them all and everything. And then that sleigh had, I think it had owls, or I think it had an eagle on each corner of the front of that sleigh. And anyway, he called this company. How he got that number, I don't know, but he called this company back east, and then that guy says, well, yeah, it's made by a company back here, but he says, how in the world did that sleigh get out by you guys out there in Washington? Well, it had to come with somebody that moved out here, and they brought it with them. But anyway, he rebuilt that sleigh, did a nice job and everything, and Roy Dennison finished it for him after he died, and got it all painted up and everything, and pinstriped and everything, and made it really nice. And I don't know if his wife ever put that in the house or not, but it was worthy of sitting in your living room. I'll tell you, that was nice sleigh. And yeah, Ron here, Harriman made some nice cars. Yeah, he fixed up some nice cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave him a whole bunch of stuff that I had no use for him. I gave him to Ron, but my dad gave him a lot more stuff there above the iron rack in the shop, his old starters and all this stuff for old cars, and he gave that to Ron. So
Then Ron had an old army truck. He used to haul logs. And then he started hauling hay from eastern Washington
yeah,
on a flatbed. And he even hauled honey for me from eastern Washington because we used to have a honey business.
yeah, he had a GMC army truck
Okay.
and a short logger. He had wooden bunks on it
Yep.
and whatever, and he had a big box that he had made for that for hauling stuff, and they tied it down. And he brought that box and that truck over to our place one time, and we loaded it up with scrap iron, and we drove that truck. I rode with my mom, my dad, and Ron Harriman, and we went to can't say the name of that scrap iron place in Seattle. But anyway, they had a lot of it there, and they melted it down right there and made iron right there. I watched that iron come out of the melter. That was really something. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Ron Harriman, he had that old. Then he bought an old GMC. It was yellow. I remember that and everything. And he had a big gas engine in it, and we fixed that up a little bit. But then he had some nice trucks after that too. But when I was a kid, that's what he had. Yeah, he used to come to the mill and with a truck and trailer, and then he would unload the lumber, and then we'd take the forklift and load the trailer onto the truck, and put the tongue of the trailer underneath the trailer, turn it around and swing it underneath the trailer, and then that's the way he hauled it back to get more lumber. Yeah.
So what'd you do with all the trucks and everything you have collected?
Still got them.
Do you still have the shop? You don't have a shop on.
Yeah.
You have a Smithway shop?
Yeah.
That's where they are?
No.
Oh.
I built a 30 by 96 shop at my son's place, and I got a 64 GMC that we made a dump truck out of. Used to be haul lumber from Great Western around to Nooksack. Great Western bought it, and
To
I
the
bought it
railhead?
in Nooksack, and then they put it on the train, and I bought the truck from them, but it had a fifth wheel on it, and we, my son and I bought a gravel box, a little box to fit that truck and everything, and a hoist and everything, and then my son put that on there with a little knowledge from me, and then I restored a 47 Diamond T, built a bed on it and everything, and Orville Larson's little brother hauled that from Eastern Washington behind his truck, and it was at his place, and it was a guy from Monroe that actually owned the truck, and I bought it from him. We hunted him up, and I bought it from him, and then I restored it and then fixed it all up and everything, and that's over at my son's place now too. And then I got a 1920 white truck, which was an oil truck out of Oregon, and anyway, we didn't restore it. We fixed it so it'd run, and you have to crank it to start it. There's no starter on it, and it's got a flatbed on it, and it's a hard rubber tired truck, 1920 white.
Probably have to tell these young people what it means to start a truck without a starter on it. They probably don't understand the crank.
Yeah, it's not easy.
No.
You got to be young. Pays to be.
And you don't wrap your thumb around the handle.
No. You hold it like this. You put your thumb underneath the thing, so if it kicks back, it don't tear your thumb off. Yeah, you ain't kidding. There's lots of guys years ago who used to walk around with no thumb.
Broken arms.
Yeah, broken arms.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a nice old truck. Started easy after once we figured it out, and there was a guy that lived over there off the Smith Road that rebuilt magnetos, and so we brought it to him, and he restored the magneto, and we got it on there and got it timed right, and it started right up. Did a wonderful job. Yeah.
Where did you learn all your fabricating skills, welding and?
Mostly just from doing it. My dad could, and I learned it from him. What I did, you just learn it from doing it.
Did you build any machinery for?
Well,
bending metal and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Dad built a big brake, and we bent all our iron and everything in the sheet iron. Just from doing it, I don't know. Yeah.
So you didn't retire then?
Well, I got a couple of welders at home, and people do ask me to fix them once in a while. And so, lawnmowers and yeah.
Well, it's a skill they don't teach anymore unless you go to college.
I still got another guy jumped me the other day and asked me if I'd weld on his lawnmower. So he's going to bring it over one of these days, and I'll weld it. Yeah.
That railroad, the Nooksack that you haul lumber to, that wasn't the BBBC, or was it?
That was Burlington Northern.
Yeah, the BBBC was farther west. Came through Everson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of that. Was actually I got a good memory. It's just short.
The Milwaukee bought it.
Join the club.
Yeah, Milwaukee. Yeah, Milwaukee was when I remembered it. When the cannery used to put all their goods on railroad boxcars, and there was a spur that ran down along the cannery.
Well, they had 3 spurs, one for each building. Because they had the main cannery, they had a warehouse right across Lincoln Street, and then they had the old Carnation building as a warehouse. There were spurs for each one of them.
It split over here by, where am I at?
Corner Linden.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it split on the other side of Farmer's Roost. It split there, and then it came down alongside, and it went by the railroad where belongs to that Twine outfit. Used to be Nichimo, used to be in there, and then it went across Lincoln Street and it went over there, and that was as far as it went. And they used to load cannery goods there.
Yep.
In with a little forklift.
Well, their pears and apples and stuff came in from Eastern Washington on that train.
Yeah. I worked over there when I was really young, and
what year?
Use the mic.
I don't remember what year it was.
I worked there in fall of 1950.
Oh, yeah, it was before. Yeah, it must have been about then. I worked with guys I knew, but I can't remember their names anymore.
Well, Percy Berg was a foreman there.
Yeah.
Reichendeifer and Bert Stratton were all foremen in that cannery.
I remember the guy that he lived out here, Harry Tamersma, owned that farm, and I helped him tear the house down. And I can't remember that guy's name either, but he used to stop at the shop all the time.
Bert Lindsay?
Yeah, Bert Lindsay.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, Bert would stop at the shop. He was a single guy. His wife died years ago. He had a boy and a girl. And then he stopped at the shop all the time because my dad bought that lathe from the cannery when the cannery sold all that stuff out. So he came down and walked around that lathe all the time. I guess he was still daydreaming from the time when he ran it. Anyway, he was a nice old guy. Yeah, he used to stop at the shop all the time. Yeah. He was a main fixer there at the cannery. I remember him when the cannery. We went down there and my dad bought a few things, and I remember going down there and taking a bunch of that stuff apart.
Well, that cannery was known around the world for their Blue Lake beans.
Oh, is that right?
Yep. There used to be just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres of Blue Lake pole beans here in the county.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, there was lots of people around here worked there.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of people.
Put a lot of kids through college,
Yeah,
and
you
a
ain't
lot of
kidding.
money into families.
I remember my mom worked there for a while too.
So did
I
mine.
remember worked in the beans or something.
Well, they
Yeah.
did beets and carrots and
Oh yeah,
and
Oh,
beans and apples.
yeah.
When you going to write the book about it? I wanted to, but when Bert Kale was the attorney for the family cannery, C.S. Kale was my great-grandfather, and I asked him, and he said, "Jim, everything that needs to be known about the Kale cannery has already been written." I knew I was not going to get any information out of the Kales.
Bert was the judge.
Yes,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
but he was that was before he was a judge.
Yeah.
He was the attorney for the
Yeah.
cannery. When they closed, he was the attorney, or when they sold it, he was the
Yeah.
attorney. And but I wanted so much to capture that because that was a big economic boost in this whole area.
Oh, it was. Absolutely.
They had up to 600 employees a
Yeah.
year, and they had all the farmers that produced produce for that.
Yep.
I think every housewife in the county has
And all
worked
the
there at
kids
one
that
time.
picked beans. Well, it used to be that you, within 2 or 3 weeks out of getting out of high school, you could start picking strawberries, then raspberries, and then beans. They could work all summer long. The kids could.
You also remember that we couldn't have school that overlapped strawberry picking.
No.
They needed 4,000 kids out of school so that by the time strawberries got ripe.
And I
So they
remember
didn't
them
do that.
delaying school one time because the beans were late.
Right. If,
Until they got finished picking the
if,
beans.
if there were still beans to be picked, they didn't start school.
That's right.
Wow.
We lived in an agrarian society.
Yeah, it's a lot different now.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Those of us who remember the pole beans, they,
Oh, yeah.
they not only had to be tilled, they had to be poles put in,
Yep.
big poles put in every 10 feet, and then
Well,
the little poles pulled in.
In
And
the wintertime, after when there was great big piles of individual bean poles out here in Strandell,
Yeah.
right by where the water tower used to be.
And I hauled pickup loads of them home when the cannery quit, and they were just laying there, and people were taking them.
Oh, yeah?
I hauled pickup loads of them home, and one summer it took me all summer to build a fence out of them.
I'll be darned.
But I built a real unique fence. Part of it went this way, and part of it went this way. And yeah, I built a fence out
And
of it.
all of those poles were virgin cedar.
Yes.
They were
All hand
old
split.
growth cedar, all hand grown.
Hand split.
My great uncle had a contract with CS to split, I forgot what, 2,000 of those things, I think. I can't imagine it. But they were originally 8-footers.
Yeah.
They were 8-foot poles. They
You
were,
had to have a pole by every plant.
Yep. And somebody had to go out there and do that.
Yep.
And then they had to string them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they had to pick them.
I was
And
not
then
a
they had
very,
to take everything down and take it back.
Yep.
I wasn't a very good bean picker, so I worked at a silo. Yeah. I ate too many strawberries and raspberries, so they didn't hire me for that. Yeah, I worked in a silo, and I remember working on a silo that didn't have a roof on it. And we put more silage in that thing, and then it would hold, and it had a big mound. And then we quit because it was plumb full, just couldn't get any more in it. And then somebody had to walk up the ladder and stand on the last rung, hold our arm up so we knew which way to slide off the pile to the stairs. A little scary, but we made it. Yeah, and I can't remember that guy's name. Is that farm on the Tom Road?
Well, the old wood hoop silos,
Yeah.
we used to go over the side and go and with the cables and go down the outside of the silos.
Oh yeah. Oh
Otherwise, we had to dig out to go down the ladder.
Oh yeah.
What do you think OSHA would think about that?
They would.
They'd have a heyday, wouldn't they?
Oh yeah.
I remember crawling up the ladders in that little steel tube, and that
Yeah.
was scary.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
You missed a rung, you were going to go straight down to the bottom.
Oh yeah.
I worked on them silos. They didn't even have that metal cover around them. They were just ladders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember one story about. You remember when they went dry, they had a lot of liquid at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
That was pure alcohol.
Yeah.
And,
I never drank
and
any of it.
our neighbor across the road, Cordis, was cleaning out his silo,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so he used water to push it all out, and
Yeah.
then it ran down to the creek.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Drunk fish.
And no, it wasn't drunk fish, but that night, none of the cows would come in.
Oh.
And they finally got them in, and got them in their stanchions, and locked them down, and they all laid down. And they wouldn't give any milk. By morning, they were starting to give milk, but the milk smelled like alcohol, so they couldn't ship it. Had a bunch of drunk cows. You know, those cows were standing along this creek that was going from the silo to the water, the source that was going from the silo down. They were standing along and drinking it. And they got the whole. I remember Grandpa talking about don't let the cows into the apple orchard because they'll get themselves drunk.
And birds used to drink that juice out of the silos, and you could tell they were a little bit inebriated.
I know some of them had bungholes in that they used to take out and make their own refreshments. Of course, I guess that's not as bad as the submariners that were drinking wood alcohol right out of their batteries.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, I remember I joined the fire department in '59 in Nooksack, and then when Nooksack couldn't make it anymore, they joined the district in Everson here, and we had a silo fire. Boy, I tell you can't hardly get them out. You can pour water in there all day long, and they won't go out. They eventually go out. Yeah.
Yeah, the silo full of corn's hot.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
Oh yeah.
So we got a wrap.
Yeah.
We're through. We ran out of tape.
That's good. I'm glad.
Anybody else have any questions that we didn't answer?
I was just wondering, a couple of times, or 2 or 3 times, I heard people talk about reservoirs that were dismantled. Why don't we have reservoirs? Because we go through this whole thing of all this rain, and then in the summer we go through all this thing and we don't have enough water. Why do we not reserve our water anymore?
We've learned to rely on other things.
Like what?
Oh, well, we've got underground pipes that bring it to us now.
Well, they've got 3 big storage tanks out here at Strandell
Yeah.
for the Everson water system, and it used to be up on a tower.
Right.
That tower is now over. Oh, I saw it somewhere, and I can't tell you where it is, but it's over northwest of Linden.
Yeah,
They
they own
saved
that.
the tower.
Somebody did. It's
The
not
guy-
as tall as it was, but it's sitting over
The
there.
guy that owned LTI, his son owns it, and it's off of, you go down Lennon Birch Bay Road, and you go to, now I can't say the name
go
of that
north.
road. Yeah, and then you turn and go north about 2 or 3 miles, and it sets
It's over
off,
in there somewhere.
it sets off on the left.
Yeah,
They're using it for water storage? or
No, just decoration.
just
Ah.
there.
He bought it just to own
Yard
it.
art.
Oh, yeah. And the kids, the high school seniors used to climb up there and put their
Their class year on there.
class year
Did
on
you
it.
ever climb up it?
I never did, my sister did.
That is, you know, you went up along the leg, but then to get on the thing, you had to go, the ladder went like this.
Yeah,
So if your feet left the rungs, you were hanging there
yeah.
40, 50 feet above ground. And, you know, your feet wanted to drop off. You had to make sure you had weight on the foot all the time or else you drop off.
Yeah, there
And
were,
then coming back down, you got to go the reverse because when you come over the edge, there's nothing but ground, air under you. You
there was
gotta-
quite a number of years painted on the side of that.
I never would
That
go
old
up there a
barn
second
down
time.
there at Meade Avenue, I think that we called it the Kale Barn. That thing, they climb up there and painted numbers on that a lot too. We
Oh,
called
that one that got torn down.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was what was that guy's name that farmed there last?
Elder was.
No,
Oh.
Elder?
Elder owned it, but
Oh,
Elder was got it from Kale.
DeGroat.
DeGroat. Yeah.
DeGroat
Yeah,
lived in that
yeah.
chicken house across the road.
Yeah,
Right.
Yep.
Remodeled chicken house, yeah.
Yep.
And that had a big
Yes.
cement building.
I wonder, I think it was called the Smith's Motel that was out here on the corner of Everson Goshen and, what the heck is Robinson Street? Did that have anything to do with your family? Is that what that was called? The Smith's?
Yeah, it was called Smith's Motel, but it was a dentist in Everson here who got killed riding a motorbike, hit a tree. But he lived there and owned it for a while. But
No relation.
no.
Was that the one that's converted out of a chicken house?
No, it's a big house on the corner.
Oh,
And then they built their chicken house in the back was apartments. They made apartments out of
Yep.
that chicken
I've
house.
worked on those.
Yeah, yeah.
well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You're a Kenny body. Now you're a whole lot smarter.